Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are going to be repainting a painting that I did at paint night. This was probably a couple months ago now. I painted a gray tufted titmouse at paint night. I don't remember what we were supposed to be painting, but I painted my own thing. And the more I looked at it, the more I just thought I could do better. And I really should have at least gotten a little bit of video of it before I painted over it, but I already recovered the whole background in a different color, and together we are going to repaint a tufted titmouse on the same canvas because I can do better than that. We can do better than that. We're going to make a really cute tufted titmouse. Let's go. So here's the one picture I managed to find of this painting. But as you can see, I had already painted over the background by the time I started the video. I don't know what I was thinking. I did try to keep that bottom branch in basically the same place and same shape as it was in the original, but I added that upper branch because I thought the original painting just needed something. It was too blah. It didn't have enough going on in the background. It didn't have enough going on the branch. Every time I looked at it, I really, really didn't like it. I was pretty happy with the bird, but his scale was a little bit off, and I was not happy at all with the color I ended up with for the background, and I really wasn't happy with the tree branch. The reference photo that I was going off was a pine tree. And while those are pretty and while I can paint them, they're not my favorite to paint. I tend to not like how pine trees look in paint. Even when done by somebody who has a lot more skill than me when it comes to painting pine needles, I just don't like them. I love pine trees, the actual pine trees, but I do not like how they look in paint. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. I've tried every so often to make it work, and I just don't like it. I'm not fond of it, so maybe this will be my wake-up call and I will never paint pine needles again. We'll see. But I liked adding this little stipple texture background to this. I think that added a lot of detail. It added a lot more depth to this piece. Like you saw in the first couple of seconds of this video, the original was just that kind of flat, almost a slate gray blue color, and it was fine, but it wasn't working the way that I wanted it to work, and it just didn't have the same depth of color or depth of field that I wanted. So this is probably the spot that I spent the longest time doing, is just these leaves. I ended up using, I believe, 5 different colors. Most of them I didn't even mix. I just used like phthalo blue. I did mix I had to do like a tealy green, not a tealy green, more of an aqua green later, that I did mix, and I used a purple, but for the most part I just wanted to keep these kind of a flat color. I really like this leaf style. I think it looks really pretty. Looking back on this video at a later date, I actually love how this looks with only a few leaves on it, and I kind of wish that I had left it like this. When I was painting it, it really felt like it was too empty when I left it with just a few leaves, but looking back on it, that's really pretty. I'll probably use that later on and do another branch like this that only has a few leaves, because I think that looks really nice. But what I was originally going for and what I ended up sticking with while I was painting this was a branch that was completely loaded with leaves. I wanted it to be totally full. I didn't want there to be a bunch of open branch. I really wanted it to be super full, super alive tree branch. I do apologize too. There are a bunch of shots of the back of my head. I don't think I was paying super close attention to where the camera was, so whoopsie. But like I said, I did spend probably the greatest amount of time on this piece just working on these leaves. I wanted it to have a lot of depth, same as the like background. I wanted as much depth as I could get without having to do an insane amount of detail. And I actually really like painting this shape of leaf. They're relatively simple, and I think they always come out really cute. If ever I'm teaching paint night, this is one of those leaf styles that I will kind of gravitate toward for teaching, just because it is a pretty simple shape to learn, and it's a pretty simple one to teach. And as long as you're paying attention with how you're holding your brush, it's pretty easy to do and relatively foolproof. I do know some people have a hard time with it, but once you get the hang of it, it's really nice and simple, and they just always come out super cute. You never quite get the same exact shape twice, but you still get enough of the same shape that you can tell the leaves are from the same plant. So that's always a plus, right? I did start out trying to paint some, like, the leaves on the upper branch while it was on the top of the canvas, and something about that angle, it just was not working for me. So I did flip this canvas a few times to get the angle that I needed for getting these leaves in. You can see how this is definitely the part that I spent the most time on, though, with the sheer mass of leaves. And you can see how it almost gets a lot busier with the amount of leaves that I'm adding. I don't hate it. I definitely don't hate it. But just looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I could have done fewer leaves if I wanted to. It would have saved me some time. But again, the look I was going for at the time was a very full branch. So that's what we got. A full branch. And I do think it turned out well. I am pretty happy with the final result. I really, really like how that stippling turned out in the background. I think that just added an absolute ton of depth and detail to this that it really needed. So see here, I'm switching to another color. This is like a paler green. My head was blocking the camera for about a dozen leaves, so I cut that out for you so you don't have to look at my cowlick. No point in that. I think adding the leaves in multiple colors and multiple layers, though, really helped kind of keep that depth that I was going for, and it really unified this piece because I have 4 or 5 different colors on the background with that stipple, and then the actual background color is about 3 different shades. So doing multiple colors for the leaves just really matched the feel of the background. And as you can see, it does look really good with the multitude of leaves on it as well. It almost looks a little bit like pine tree-ish, except that those leaves are not pine needle shaped at all. At this point, I am adding what I believe is my last color, and I don't think you can really tell in the video, but that's a purple tone. It's almost like a plummy, I don't know, I mixed it. It's a plummy shade that I just thought added a nice little pop of color to this piece. So we're getting close to starting on the bird because this is my last leaf color. I'm pretty sure that I spent about 2 hours just painting leaves, by the end of it, my hand was pretty done holding a paintbrush, I will say. Would probably be good if I got more used to taking breaks. I also missed actually filming the start of me painting the bird, but it is what it is. So in the original, the bird was pretty small, and I kept thinking that it could be a lot bigger than that. It could take up a lot more space, and it would just fit the size of the canvas a lot better. This isn't even that big of a canvas. It's an 11 by 14, so relatively small. But the bird in the original was just very small, especially considering the fact that there was nothing going on in the background, and there was only the one branch with very sparse pine needles to fill the rest of the space. So the painting just felt very empty and almost a little cold and kind of lifeless. So just adding all of those details to the background, adding the leafy branches that just have so much more texture and life and vibrancy, and then I think almost doubling the size of the bird, I think that is really what makes this painting work a lot better in this new version. And I considered not redoing this painting. I've done Tufted Titmouse paintings before, and I've been pretty happy with them. It's a cute bird, and they're really pretty. My parents even have some in their backyard. But birds are not super my forte, and so there was a part of me that was just, well, it's fine, you can just leave it. But then, I don't know, I just kept looking at it and thinking, but I would just really like if I had a really pretty painting of a tufted titmouse. Because the one that I have, it's cute, but it's not like my favorite or anything. It's not one that I would show off in a video even. It's just hanging in my bathroom. It's kind of the quintessential bathroom painting. It just, I don't know, you look at it and you think, yeah, that belongs in a bathroom. And this one, I wanted to be more of one that you could hang in your house and it wouldn't seem out of place or anything. It wouldn't be one that you think, well, what's that doing there? It would be one that you look at and you just see how pretty it is. Because it's a really pretty tufted titmouse. Like, they're very pretty birds. They're really cute. They have that adorable tuft on the top of their heads. But they're also really, I don't know, they're very pretty. They're very different. Even though it's just a gray and white bird, they're very cute and very pretty. And they kind of hop. I don't know. I like birds. You know me. I like wingspan. I like the birds. And I spent a great deal of time on the wing, again because wings have very specific feather texture, and I wanted to capture some of that texture without getting into too much detail. I try to not make my paintings overly detailed. I find that if I try to make them too realistic, they don't match with my backgrounds. My backgrounds tend to have more whimsy and more kind of fun, funky feel. And then if I go for too realistic in the fox or the bird or the stoat or the snail or whatever it is, it just doesn't quite match. So while I try to make it look like it is definitely a tufted titmouse, I also spend a great deal of time making sure it doesn't look too much like a real tufted titmouse. It's a really delicate balance because I want it to still match with the background that is clearly not anything in particular. And it's not like it's an actual tree. I don't know what kind of tree this is supposed to represent. I don't even know if this is a habitat that a tufted titmouse would be in. But they need to look like the subject matter without looking too much like the subject matter, essentially, is all I'm trying to say. And I think it's really interesting because you think of art as art imitates life, and art should look as similar as possible to the thing you're trying to paint. But, I mean, you get a lot of illustration that isn't like that, and a lot of art just looks better if it doesn't perfectly imitate life. So that's what I go for with the vast majority of my art. I want the object to look similar, to look recognizable, but not be exactly what you're used to. Like my blue fox. You can tell he's a fox, but he's blue. And we don't have blue foxes. I spent a lot of time on the titmouse as well. I think just getting his shape and his proportions and his face exactly right, it took a lot more time than I was anticipating. You can see my reference photo here. I did have to really use that reference to get his face correct. They have a very interesting black patch right above their beak that if I'm not paying super close attention, I can put that in the wrong spot, like pretty easily. And then it just doesn't look like a tufted titmouse. If it doesn't have that little patch, it's just not a tufted titmouse. I think when you put the eye in, that's really when it starts to come to life and you can really tell what it is. Like 5 seconds ago you knew it was a bird, but now that it has an eye, it's a more lifelike bird. There's just something about the eyes. They add so much to the character. I always try to add life through the eyes too. I try to add a little twinkle, or if I'm doing foxes, I try to kind of upturn the eyes a little bit, because it just kind of adds this illusion that the character is happy or interested. And I think that just adds a lot more, again, just life to the painting. And here I'm just adding some shading so that he fits into the light scheme of this painting. I tend to, especially with birds, start with a flat color and then build up from there. So I started with just plain white for his belly and his neck. And now I've added some brown and some black to that to make a kind of muddy gray. And I'm just shading him in so that he has that little bit of shading that just makes him look even more realistic and even more like a bird that could just fly right off the page. Even like despite the number of times that I have shaded a character like this, it is just absolutely fascinating to me how much depth you add with just that little bit of shading. Like, your character can be super cute, but as soon as you add that little tiny bit of shading, that little bit of depth, now it looks like a character that could actually fly off the page and be a real creature that would be sitting in your hand or sitting beside you. And I just really love that. I think that's one of the most fun things about painting for me. This is one of my least favorite parts. I hate painting bird feet. They're weird. They don't angle the way that I want them to. They've got weird little talon thingies. And yes, I did want to add a million leaves to these branches so that I wouldn't have to paint bird feet. That was my entire intention. So yeah, I could have left the branches more bare, but I would have been mad at myself, I think, because I would have had to paint bird feet. And I don't want to paint bird feet. And then one of the last little details that I'm going to add is the tufted titmouse has this very close to like a burnt sienna color right under their wing. And the last couple of times that I've painted a tufted titmouse, even the original of this painting, I forgot to put that color in. So this time I was very specific and very particular about making sure that he had his additional color his burnt sienna is right there. It blends right in, and he looks super duper adorable. And I hope very much that you guys have enjoyed watching me paint this little bird. I think that he turned out super, super cute, and I'm really glad that I repainted him. Thanks, guys. Bye.